Ralph Seppi, creator of the successful YouTube channel Ralphthemoviemaker, made his first full-length feature film, and it is not great. Now you may be thinking that I'm not giving him enough credit because of the budgetary limitations, time constraints, lack of professional experience from Ralph and his actors, and the sheer impossibly impressive fact that he made a good-for-what-it-is feature film while he was pretty much as old as I am now. And I mean, you're right. This is not a review from a guy who's a huge fan of Ralph the Movie Maker. It won't even be a review, really, mainly just observations about the filmmaking. I've seen a lot of his videos and his other short films, but my main exposure to his personality and content is through his Sardonicast podcast. His reviews don't really capture me in the same way as his shitting on movies contemporaries like Red Letter Media or YMS due to a combination of my feeling his age and delivery lack the credibility to be able to properly critique these movies, and my overall jealousy of his success at his age. You know, it's like, what does this guy know about movies? He's like my age. Why can't I be as successful as Ralph? Betty's a virgin too. All I want is to be happy. Oh fuck, oh fuck. My main interest in following the production of the film, the final product, and his other movies is more out of fascination with amateur filmmaking and independent production. Despite his other films not being very good and pretty cringy, it is unimaginable how ambitious and well edited and directed both of his previous films, The High and King Candy, were, given how young he was and the limited resources and experience he had at the time. As an amateur filmmaker, I can understand how impressive they are as a whole, despite not being very objectively good scene by scene. I think the biggest accomplishment of Lover is that it's the only YouTuber movie I can think of that's an actual attempt at a real movie from someone who considers themselves a filmmaker and not a YouTube content creator. Every other example I can think of a YouTuber or YouTuber person making a full-length feature, it always feels in some way like an attempt to please the fans who allowed it to happen, or make it in a way that their typical consumer can enjoy. I always wondered why we don't just get a real movie from an online content creator or personality. Like, what if the next Pulp Fiction or any other random good movie was made by a YouTuber? I guess Bo Burnham would be the best example, but he's certainly not a YouTuber in the same way that Ralph or Red Letter Media is. I think the main problem comes from the fact that an online creator's goal in making a feature is mainly an attempt to satisfy their fans or continue their success in some way that is generally considered real entertainment. And any attempt at making an enjoyable piece of art or entertainment that stands alone from their content takes a backseat to inside jokes, self-references, and making something that matches the tone of their content. I used to fucking love Rooster Teeth. Back when they could be considered like one thing and didn't feel like a faceless corporation. I gave Laser Team's fundraiser like $35 to get the Blu-ray in 2014. I got it, I watched it with my brother. He said, "Man, that was a piece of shit." And I said, "You know what? I liked it anyway." Not really being a typical fan of Ralph's channel, this was definitely not the experience I had with Lover. I just kind of watched it and went, "Man, that was a piece of shit." Just kidding, it's not a piece of shit, but it definitely felt more like a student film than the actual movie that some of his fans and myself were hoping for. But that's also what separates it from other YouTuber features that are actual dog shit. Ralph wasn't trying to make something with the same humor or tone or personality of his content. He wasn't trying to put in references that make his backers happy. Ralph set out to make a piece of art, and I really do appreciate that. But I do not want to keep his dick in my mouth for the entirety of the video, even though it is girthy and tastes of ginger. The movie, as it is, has major problems.
Where were you?
I was at a friend's house studying. We have a final on Friday, so...
You didn't want to call or shoot a text?
I was going to, but we just...
But what?
The changes from the original color grading and the content of the film featured in the original trailers and promotional material to the final film have been discussed in other videos, and I don't have much to add as far as what goes into a full-scale independent production. Any speculation I can come up with about the choices that were made that led to some of the problems, and any speculation I will go on to say throughout the rest of the video is just that, speculation. I don't know the exact reason that Ralph went from having a different color grading represent each of the seasons and give the film its structure to black and white, but it can be assumed that he figured it fit better with the eerie and quiet tone he was trying to establish, budgetary problems, or he just thought it looked better than he originally planned. Plenty of indie films have used black and white to make it look better than if it was in color. Kevin Smith used it when making Clerks because it was the 90s and he couldn't afford color, but it ended up giving the film its iconic look and separated it from other indie films at the time. Whatever the case was for Lovers, some of the black and white worked really, really well, and sometimes we just really couldn't see anything. It was never a super crucial scene or shot that was too dark, but I wonder why he even chose to include the shots at all. Other than that, some of the cinematography was genuinely really, really good, and that's probably what Ralph has going for him the most as a filmmaker right now. The guy can compose a really good shot, and I think he knows that. The drone shots were also really good, but they aren't as impressive as it may have been before drone shots were so ubiquitous. A helicopter shot was a really expensive and time-consuming thing to have in a movie back in the day, but now it can be included in the vlog footage of anyone with a couple $100 in their savings account. Drone shots look good, and a bird's eye view can give the perspective of looking down on something as if God or whatever. But whenever the shots came up in Lover, it was hard not to think of them in terms of their use in an independent production and go, this is a drone shot. He also knows how to film cats really well. I'll only go over the plot really briefly because I've only seen the movie once, and I don't want it to seem like lines I didn't pay attention to or obvious visual clues are problems with the movie. All I have to say is that there were a lot of moments where me and my friend were like, who's who? Who lives with who? Who's still with who? Is she cheating on Kyle? Did they break up but she's still living with him? Is she cheating on Howard? Were they even together? What the fuck is with the roofie in the beginning? Why is Ralph so goddamn cute? Like I said, all these questions might just be entirely due to the fact that I'm typically a huge dumbass in most situations, and that includes movies that expect any amount of tension from the audience. But I also believe that if something isn't clear enough for an audience member, it can't always be defended by saying that they just didn't get it. It may just need to be better established. One of my biggest problems with Lover was due to the film possibly going two ways and ultimately falling somewhere in the middle of the two extremes. One would have been a surprisingly great film that was exciting and did everything it was trying to accomplish. The other would have been a wildly entertaining amateur mess with a lot of cringeworthy moments like with his previous films.
I just want to know how much I made, so I can tell God.
Ultimately, it's neither, and it's not as good as the first, but also not as bad as the second. I know this is a review about Lover, but I really want to take some time to discuss the other movies that Ralph the Movie Maker has made and how they reflect on this film. They're cringy, a little stupid, and they have a lot of the trappings of a movie made by a person in high school, but there's something really beautiful about them. Something unique about how driven Ralph is to accomplish his dream of being a filmmaker and how his characters reflect that motivation. Something endearing about how hard he's trying despite not having the resources or experience necessary to make a movie as good as he may have wanted. Something attractive about the way his lip quivers in soft light. Again, not to bring up my own filmmaking too much, but I want to stress how hard it is to make something. I only have like a few things that I've made that are in any way impressive or that I would actually want to show to people, and the truth is that if I could have accomplished what Ralph did at his age, I absolutely would have. And that being said, his movies are fucking hilariously bad, objectively.
Your parents didn't buy you one of these, right? What'd they get you instead? They got you a pocket knife. And you think you're tough shit because you got a pocket knife. Maybe you can come over one morning, butter my fucking bagel with it.
Again, this is not a review of King Candy, but some of the failures of that film that carried over into Lover had to do with a lack of understanding about the subject matter and how it's just cringy to have gangs say stuff like that, even if it is a stylized world.
What do you mean?
I mean, you didn't even expect us to tie you up, rob the joint.
Like, when you write about something you don't know about, you often, fill in the blanks in your head, or either make stuff up, or just kind of make it sort of how you see it in other movies. I don't know the extent of research that Ralph did, or what his life is like, but I can just kind of guess that a lot of Ralph's films don't feature a lot of content that he pulled from his actual life experiences and observations. King Candy and The High were both sort of attempting to be the rise and fall stories featured in movies like Goodfellas, or Wolf of Wall Street, or Citizen Kane, or whatever. Structurally, they work just as good as any of those movies, and surprisingly capture the pacing and escalation found in them. The problem comes when characters say stuff that nobody has ever said.
If you were poor and black, I could probably shoot you right now and get away with it. There wouldn't even be a trial. I'd probably get a fucking medal.
Or another small example is when his character in The High wears sunglasses all the time to hide his red eyes from people because of the weed he smokes.
Yeah, it's from the pot. Well, I know that, but I'm saying, is there anything I can put in my eyes to, get rid of that?
Nah, you just wear sunglasses, and it'll cover up your eyes, and no one will notice.
Right.
If Ralph ever, smoked weed at the time, especially if he'd ever attempted to hide his eyes from his parents or teachers, he'd know that a couple of drops of Visine does the job just beautifully. And it's a trick that's been utilized ever since our parents were toking up in their parents' basements. It's a very minor detail, completely unimportant to the overall piece, and something that's easy to look past or accept as something the characters were unaware of. I can easily put myself in the shoes of Ralph when he made the decision in the script. Giving my character aviators makes enough sense and gives him an iconic look that works well enough in the story. The only reason I bring it up is because it is the best example of a film that was made by someone who didn't have enough life experience yet to properly make the story or subject matter believable. And maybe he did know about the eye drops but chose to ignore the solution because he thought the visual of the sunglasses was more important than being realistic. That's also an understandable thing to think when making a movie, but being true to your own experience is more important in making something feel authentic and real than people may think. To be completely clear, not everything has to be realistic, but everything should feel intentional. Like the piece is doing exactly what it is trying to do, and you can tell. This applies to Lover in the same way, and it's one of the reasons it feels more of an example of a really well-done amateur film and not really a real movie. There's little, pockets of real moments that you can glean, like the one where Howard and Delilah talk in the car for the first time.
What do you want to know?
Your name? That'd be nice to know.
Or the dorm party feeling kind of authentic in its... Oh my god. Or the dorm party feeling authentic in its aesthetic.
What I'm gonna do, you ever used an ice catch before? It cools down the hips so that it goes into your lungs nice and smooth. You ready?
Are you gonna first?
Yeah, I'll show you, and then you'll go ahead for it.
But I think a lot of what holds the movie back is it just doesn't feel, very real. Right off the bat, the conversations between Howard and Delilah just feel awkward when I think they're supposed to feel endearing.
Hey, good morning.
Morning.
You sleep okay?
Yeah, the bed is so comfy.
All right. Well, I'm making some breakfast or popcorn, actually.
Popcorn for breakfast?
Yeah. And I rented a movie.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go home today.
There's plenty of movies that have a more stylized approach to dialogue, like movies like Drive or Once Upon a Time in America, where if you imagine the conversations or silences actually taking place in real life, they'd be super weird.
My beloved is white and ruddy.
But in Lover, the style of dialogue isn't something that's clearly established enough or consistent or intentional or whatever. Much of this could be the result of changes due to time constraints or lack of dedication or experiences from the actors. I mean, it's hard to make even really well-written dialogue sound like Hollywood gold if the actors just can't fucking, do it. Here's a scene from The Dark Knight as an example.
You're crazy. I'm not. No, I'm not.
Now, this is a great and iconic line, but the line in the script literally reads, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not." The combination of Heath Ledger's ability and experience with Nolan's direction is the only reason that line is what it is. And this is not me saying that every problem with the story or delivery or tone or whatever of the movie is simply the result of the actors or Seppi's ability to direct them. But it is a huge reason a decent script can feel so amateur. Fucking take this line from King Candy.
You lack foresight. You don't even have common sense. Why would I want a business partner who lacks in those areas?
It's definitely not a beautiful piece of dialogue or anything, but the main reason you cringe a little bit when you hear it is just the understandable fact that the dude delivering the line is not an actor. From what I understand, he's a guy that Ralph knows that happens to be in the movie. I'm pretty certain this is also the reason Ralph casts himself as the lead role in pretty much all of his big movies. When you're making an amateur film and create it with a do-it-yourself attitude, it makes perfect sense that you do the acting yourself too. A lot of people's first shorts, including my own, are done by setting up a camera in a room by yourself, getting into frame, making the movie, editing the movie, putting it on YouTube, never showing it to anyone, and then taking it off YouTube. Even now, with a few more hands to help, there's still no reason, in my head, to give anyone else that much of a role, because I know how it looks in my head. It's a combination of not trusting someone else to deliver it the way I want them to, and an inherent lack of an ability to communicate exactly what I want to someone else. I'm positive this is a lot of the reason Ralph casts himself. Part of this also might just be wanting to deliver his fans and financial backers like Ralph the Movie Maker movie. But if I were to suggest something to him, it may just be to not cast him in his next movie, maybe? And there are so many examples of great directors who can direct their own films and still be the main character, like George Clooney, Ben Affleck, Clint Eastwood, Ben Stiller, Louis C.K., Woody Allen, Mike Birbiglia, pretty much every comedian who directs their own stuff, actually. But usually they're like actors who become successful enough to make movies. Even though it's still hard being the star and director, that's like the reason they're good at it. They're already professionals. Some creators like Matt Johnson and Sacha Baron Cohen lead their own films because they require like a whole lot of improv, and most of the actual directing of the movie is done specifically through the performance. All of this being said, I think if Ralph wants to make a movie that feels like a real production, he needs to be able to just hire a good actor and make the actor give the performance he wants, or surprise him with something beautiful that he didn't know he wanted. He's definitely not a bad actor. He's definitely putting in a lot more effort than a lot of the other people in his films. But I don't think he's good enough yet to be a leading man. Like, not yet, at least.
Yeah.
Daddy Locos.
Oh.
My friends and I call it the DL,
okay.
but it's really
I get
Daddy
it.
Locos.
It's the initials.
Yeah, the initials, exactly. You headed there now?
Again, I'm not a great actor, especially not in my own work. Even reading this script feels like super awkward just because I'm not used to making videos like this. Like that line right there. What the fuck am I saying? I just really think it would help establish him as like a quote-unquote real filmmaker if he wasn't in his own stuff after this. However, like, you know, with more experience or even a better performance in his next movie, like, easily could prove me wrong. I honestly felt that Victoria Beaudoin, the actress playing Delilah, gave the best performance of the film. It definitely didn't exactly escape the trappings of an independent production, but she delivered most of the lines in a way where it felt like it was coming out of a human mouth.
Yeah. Sure.
Maybe that's even too condescending. Everyone did the best under the circumstances and all that shit. And again, it's hard not to continuously bring up the budgetary or even creative constraints that led to the final product as an excuse for every problem. Even though the character interactions may not be that believable or the acting may be unprofessional, it's really easy to see how Ralph's next project could be a whole lot better with more resources and the knowledge gained by the successes and failures of this first film. And to repeat, this isn't a review from a big fan trying to defend his movie or gush about how proud he is of Ralph's success. This is a video from another aspiring filmmaker trying to analyze the work of someone that I'd really like to be like someday. And if Ralph does ever watch this, I'm sure he knows about a lot of the issues I brought up, or could even shed light about how wrong I was about most of the decisions he made. He knows the influence he's had on other creative young people, and he knows he has something to be proud of. Ralph Seppi, creator of the successful YouTube channel Ralphthemoviemaker, made his first full-length feature film, and I think he has a lot of what it takes to make a really good movie someday. Unless he gets hit by a car. I don't need no partner.